Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe weather which is going to be moving through parts of the central and southern plains, as well as some drought relief which is going to be taking place over the southwest for this week. We're going to be recapping the drought situation over the west coast, and we also have some of those warmer temperatures which are going to be moving into the northwest especially. We're going to briefly cover that when we go over the watches and warnings, and we're going to finally talk about some of the tropics where we do have potentially another storm which could develop. Right now, it does have the potential to become a tropical storm, although it is going to face some challenges as it heads further and further on to the west. So we're going to be going over all of that and more in today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. Here's a look at what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have some excessive heat warnings in effect for much of the northwest in that kind of purple color. We have some heat advisories in the orange color for parts of Montana, Idaho, and a little bit of Oklahoma. We have excessive heat watches in effect in the dark red, which covers much of the west. And then we have some flood watches over the central and southern plains. And that's due to what we're going to be talking about with the severe weather for later today into tomorrow. Yesterday, we had a high temperature at Death Valley, California of 113 degrees with a low temperature in Saranac Lake, New York, where they got down to 32 degrees, so right at that freezing mark. The highest rainfall report was in Buckhead Ridge, Florida, where they got 3.29 inches of rain, and there were no snowfall reports as of yesterday. So taking a look at the current Storm Prediction Center page, as you can see, we have a slight risk, which is currently in effect. They might upgrade this to an enhanced risk over a small area. It's going to be very hit or miss, and they definitely could just keep this as a slight risk, just because it doesn't look like there is going to be any one big thing that's going to really stick out with these storms. They're going to be more of just your average, slightly severe types of storms. So they're probably going to be hanging around a slight or maybe a very weak enhanced risk for this event. You can see that slight risk goes from Illinois all the way to parts of Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. So it's a fairly wide area over the central plains, which has that slight risk in effect for today. If you look at the excessive rainfall outlook, that's shifted a little bit further to the east. So you can see that we have a 20 to 50% chance, moderate risk of flash flooding within this area in parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, where we have, again, that moderate risk of flash flooding for today. And then if we look at for tomorrow, which is Saturday, we have a 10 to 20% slight risk, which goes from Michigan and Wisconsin all the way down to Texas, and pretty much just a straight line there, where we have a 10 to 20% slight risk of flash flooding. Taking a look at the simulated radar, we're going to kind of go through when and where these storms will start to develop. So this would be by around 1 p.m. Central Time today, and you can see that we have just a few showers, and your storms are going to start off right from this line of rainfall right here. So this little demarcation through the central plains is going to actually turn into our big severe weather line. So if we go through to the next frame, you can see that the storms do start to develop around 4 p.m. Central Time. You have this line of storms that goes from Indiana and then kind of curves down into Oklahoma and Texas, and they are getting fairly severe by this point. They are going to be more isolated clusters, so you're going to have one cluster here, one cluster here, one cluster here, another cluster here. So it's not going to be one big line, more of just individual clusters of storms that are just going to come together and pretty much impact a lot of areas, a widespread area, due to the fact that they are going to be in clusters. They're not just going to be in individual supercells. So we will be dealing with more of a widespread type of effect, although they won't be as intense as if it was just one really robust type of storm. If we go to the next frame here, this would be by 7 p.m. Central Time today. You can see that we still have some of that severe weather going on from Indiana to Oklahoma. So we have still rather robust severe weather from about Oklahoma all the way up into Indiana. We're going to have CAPE values that are going to be up near 4,000 in a few of these areas, with dew points up near 76 or 77. So it does make sense why we're dealing with some of that severe weather. We have very prime conditions in the atmosphere for this to occur. I think the biggest risks would be damaging winds and hail with this type of event. And then as we go into the late evening or early morning hours tonight, you can see that we have these storms kind of dying out a little bit. They are still somewhat convective over Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, but they are starting to fizzle out a little bit. And then going into the early morning hours on Saturday morning, you can see that we're still dealing with that line of storms into Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Indiana, but they are definitely starting to kind of go down in intensity. And then you can see they're pretty much wrapping up by the later morning hours tomorrow. Here to be the Cape values for this event, and you can see this is just showing you how much energy is in the atmosphere. We're dealing with values that are between about 3,500 and 4,500 joules per kilogram, all through parts of Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. So these are rather high, and they will be enough to definitely support some thunderstorms. And you can see that the highest area of Cape is going to be that same area that's dealing with the most robust thunderstorms. If we look at the high temperatures, you can see that we're dealing with high temperatures right around the lower 90s over this area, and even as you get into Oklahoma, maybe approaching 97, 98, or 99 degrees. So these are very warm temperatures in these areas, and because of that, mixed in with the high Cape values and high dew points, which is right here, you're going to definitely be able to get some of that severe weather. Looking at the dew points, you can see that we're dealing with dew points right around 75 or 76 over this pretty much entire area, and we even have a few spots maybe approaching 77 degree dew points. So these are really fairly high numbers, and because of that, we do have a threat of severe weather for tomorrow. Now focusing on to the drought issues over the west. Now this drought monitor was last updated on June 22nd. So that would be, I believe that would be Monday or Tuesday. So that was earlier this week before we got that rainfall. The rainfall was mostly as you get further to the east. So it was mostly in this area right in here. But that should help because a decent chunk of that region is under extreme or even exceptional drought. And even if you're just in that second or first shade of drought, that is still rather significant, and it could cause some issues, especially for farming purposes. So definitely there are definitely some issues that this is affecting. We're dealing with very limited water in these areas. So we're dealing with lake levels that are at all-time lows. We're dealing with a lot of shortages in water. We're not able to supply any water in a lot of these areas, and luckily some of that rainfall that we did get is going to help out with that. So looking at the past rainfall over the last 7 days, you can see that it's not a ton, but we did get a little bit of rain, especially for this area. This is quite a bit of rainfall for these areas because when you think about it, the entire year, some of these areas haven't even gotten 2 inches of rain from January 1st. So from January all the way until now, 1 to 2 inches of rain is not a lot, and you definitely need more than that. Your average would be right around 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. So even though your average isn't a ton of rainfall, getting 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, or even half an inch of rainfall is definitely going to help out here, especially for areas in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. These areas got a decent amount of rainfall. We're dealing with about 0.1 to 0.3 inches of rain. Higher elevations definitely getting higher amounts of rainfall, and as you get further to the east, of course, those numbers are going to go up. Unfortunately, we're not dealing with a whole lot in parts of Nevada, California, even into areas like Idaho and Wyoming, still not dealing with a lot. So we still do have some drought issues in throughout that area, but they are kind of going down, and luckily as we're heading closer and closer to the southwest monsoon season, as they start to get a lot more rainfall, this drought issue should go away relatively quickly. It is going to still take a while for them to get over how much they lack in rainfall. So we're going to need quite a bit of rainfall. We're going to need an above average monsoon season, but any rainfall at this point would help these areas. Shifting our focus over to the tropics now, you can see that we have this system, which is Invest, I believe 95L, which is currently located just off the coast of Africa. It's going to be moving to the west, and it's currently moving at a fairly slow clip, but it should move a little bit faster as it heads further to the west. We have a little pocket of Saharan dust, which is right in here. That's what broke up the last system, which we were talking about just a couple days ago. All that Saharan dust, all that dry air, which was just centered just to the east of the Caribbean islands, really helped break the storm up, and that might happen with this storm. Again, this area of Saharan dust, it is thinning out a little bit. It's not as potent as it was just 2 or 3 days ago, so that might be a plus side if you want to see the storm develop. We're going to definitely talk about that as we get closer to the event, just because we don't have a lot of information on this event just yet, because most of the models are still not in and are not out that far. They're not giving their forecast out that far, so we're still going to have to wait probably another 1 or 2 days before we can get most of the models on board with this storm. Looking at Invest 95L, which if this were to form, it would be a tropical cyclone Danny. But again, it is still a far ways out before we start talking about the formation of this storm. It's located at 8.4 degrees north by 21.9 degrees west. Maximum winds at 25 knots, which is equivalent to 29 miles per hour. Minimum pressure just at 1,010 millibars, so still fairly weak in these areas. Radius of circulation 180 nautical miles. Located about 447 miles west-southwest of Africa, and if you're wondering what country, Senegal would be the closest country to the storm, and it's 460 miles south of Cape Verde, the Cape Verde Islands, which is just to its north. So it's fairly far out there. It's getting further and further away, and eventually it's going to be pretty much just in the middle of the ocean. We're going to have to see whether this will go to the south of the Caribbean islands, or whether this is just going to move to the north into the middle of the Atlantic. So there are still a bunch of questions with this storm. Looking at it on the satellite imagery, you can see it does look fairly developed. It's in that red circle right there. You can see a little bit of circulation in here. Talking about that Saharan dust, we have one pocket which is in here, and then we have another pocket which is in here. So this area, which is this first area right here, which I'll circle right now, this area is starting to thin out. It's not as potent as it looked on the satellite imagery, and if you were to look at the dust models, the NASA dust models, you would also see that this area does look like it's weakening in terms of the amount of dust and dry air, so that should be going away. We're gonna have to see about this one, which is currently coming off the coast of Africa. If this is gonna move over into near the Caribbean islands, that could cause an issue for this Invest 95L. So this is looking to take a track fairly just in a straight line, or maybe curving a little bit further west northwest. So we're gonna have to see. There are still again a bunch of questions with this event. Looking at the current model guidance, we only have about 5 models, and only 4 of them go out past about 24 hours. So we're still not really getting a lot of these models in giving their forecast just yet, just because we don't have a lot of information. We haven't really gone into the storm right now. We don't have too much data on it, just because it's so far out in the Atlantic. So once it gets closer to the Caribbean islands, we might be able to get some of the NOAA airplanes to get in there and actually gather some information on it. But until then, we're not gonna have a good idea of exactly where this is gonna go. You can see some of them have this kind of curving up to the north and maybe going around the high pressure, which is centered off the east coast, and some just have this kind of staying to the south and just going south of the Caribbean islands. Again, we really don't know which one that's going to be just yet, because we have 2 models going to the south, 2 models going to the north, 4 models in total. It's really not a lot to base your entire forecast off of. So we still need a couple more models to render in here over the next couple of days, and you can see we really don't have too many models currently running on this storm. We only have 2 models. One brings it just to a high-end tropical depression, and the other one has it to a mid-level tropical storm. So we really don't know which one this is going to be, just because again, we're still too far out and we don't have too much information, especially in that part of the Atlantic. It is hard to get and gather information through there. We don't have many weather observations out in that part of the Atlantic like we do in areas like the Gulf of Mexico or off the East Coast, where we have a lot more weather data available in that region. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.